You know, there's a lot of good JRPG series out there, like the Persona/Shin Megami Tensei series, the Tales series, and some Final Fantasy games, but we don't speak of 13, because that game was trash. However, there is another series known as The Legend of Heroes, which is not so well known here in America, but is pretty popular in Japan. The series as a whole was created by a company called Nihon Falcom, who's also known for the Ys series. The Legend of Heroes series was spun from another series called Dragon Slayer, with 2 entries from that series being titled Dragon Slayer, The Legend of Heroes 1 and 2. Exceed Games released this entry as well as another entry, Trails in the Sky, in North America. There will be spoilers for the prologue. Just a fair warning. Anyway, I'll be covering one of the more recent entries, The Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel. The game starts out at a military base, where some fighting has broken out. These students have to stop some terrorists from blowing up a city with 2 railway guns. And we get a cliffhanger just to find out what happens later in Chapter 5. But you get introduced to the game's mechanics, but more on that later. We go back in time to the real beginning of the story, and we get introduced to our main protagonist, Rean Schwarzer. Upon getting off the train and looking upon the town Trista that he will be staying in for the majority of the game, a girl bumps into him, and we get introduced to our in-canon love interest, Elisa. They make a comment about how they're some of the few students wearing red, when the majority of students are either wearing a green or a white uniform.
Hey, you've got the red uniform too, huh?
Yeah, but now that you mention it, almost everyone else on the train had a green jacket. You're one of the few I've seen in red.
After that scene, you have access to the summary section of your notebook, where the game's events are automatically recorded in this section. This and the notebook as a whole are pretty useful to let you know where you're supposed to go next, and tells you objectives, optional or mandatory, to complete. On your way to the academy, we see the first appearance of Laura, as she's talking to her butler. Afterwards, you head right to the military school that Rean attends. Seriously, Japan, why are you so obsessed with high school? I am so sick of that fucking setting. Here at the school's front gate, we get introduced to the character Huses, as he tells his driver to take it easy before going home.
This isn't open for debate. Take whatever rest you need, then return to Bereahard.
As you wish. I shall be departing, sir.
Before we head into orientation, we meet our cute little senpai/student council president Toa and local engineer George. They ask to confiscate Rean's sword, and hey, I can't blame them considering he's carrying a deadly weapon. Anyway, we go to the auditorium and listening to the principal's speech. During the speech, we see a shit ton of students, in which, creepy enough, a lot of them have the same character model. Anyway, during the speech, we get introduced to Elliot Craig, wondering about their unique red uniforms.
Hey, looks like we're sporting the same school fashion.
Yeah, no idea what the red uniform is supposed to mean, though.
Plus, we get some insight about the noble students, and because of their noble status, they get the white uniforms, while the commoners are wearing the green uniforms. Afterwards, we get to see the teacher telling the students with the red uniforms to follow her for orientation. She takes the students to an abandoned school building past the campus. We then from afar get introduced to Crow, more on him later, and this game's token lesbian character, Angelica.
Still, looks like Elisa's got some stiff competition. Quite a bevy of beauties they've got there. And I'm looking forward to getting intimately acquainted with each and every one of them.
Well, get your Yuri fanfics ready. The teacher tells her class that her name is Sarah Wallenstein. And hold on a second, I've got a little request to make. Dear Fine Game Bitches, please do an episode about Instructor Sarah. Anyway, she tells our main cast that they are the students of a new class that was just made up for this current school year, called Class 7. The idea of Class 7 is that, with the other 5 classes, 2 are made up of nothing but nobles, and 3 are made of nothing but commoners. And no Class 6, because if we go by another JRPG series, 7 sells more than 6, but just be glad it's not 8. Because fuck that game. Getting back on topic, they decided to make a whole class putting together both commoners and nobles, much to the class's surprise. And then we hear a rant from Machias Regnitz.
This must be some kind of joke. And why is this the first I've heard of it?
For the first few chapters, he's the character I want to smack right across the face the most, but we will get to the main characters in due time. Anyway, Husis makes a snarky remark about Machias' bitching.
What are you looking at?
Oh, nothing much. I just find the irony of your behavior rather humorous.
And here we see how these two tend to bicker, and it's kind of a thing that happens a lot in this game. As Sarah tells them to cut the shit, Reen realizes why they had to give their weapons to the student council president. And then Sarah activates a trap door for the students as they fall underground. Reen sees that Elisa may seriously get hurt from the fall, even though the drop really wasn't that long. And we see the silver-haired girl, Fee, use a grappling hook to avoid falling under with the rest of them. But Sarah intervenes because she ain't having that shit. Everyone gets up from the fall wondering what the hell Sarah is trying to pull, and we see that they pulled a fan service moment in which Reen's face ended up in Elisa's boobs.
Well, great. Okay. You can just hand that to me.
I was trying to feel your breast.
I got that.
Yeah, but he was trying to fill your breast and give you the tip so that we got a good table.
I want a good tip.
Yeah.
Reen tries to apologize about the situation, but Elisa is a little pissed off and proceeds to slap him.
Still, I'm just glad you're okay. That's what's really important here, right?
The devices they have start ringing due to having a communication function. Sarah explains that what they have is a battle orbit, which is a device that's in every Legend of Heroes game from my understanding. The names of their battle orbits are called Arcus units, and how they help in battle, but more on that in a bit. Anyway, each of their weapons and orbits are set on a table, and you get to set Reen's Master Quartz from the comp menu, which will allow party members to use magic known as arts. Once you're set up, you will get started on the first dungeon of the game. Before that, we get another scene of Machias and Husis declaring their love for each other. Fee goes off on her own, Laura, Elisa, and Emma form a group, and Reen forms a group with Elliot and Gaius. And the three have a talk about their weapons of choice. After some dungeon crawling, we get into a basic battle with a beetle. Don't worry, I will talk about the gameplay a little bit later. Anyway, after the fight, another beetle tries to attack an exhausted Elliot. But then it gets shot, and then Reen goes in for the killing blow. It turns out that it was Machias who shot the monster, and then he proceeds to apologize for acting like an asswipe over letting Husis get to him. Anyway, Machias joins the party, and asks what social class the others are in.
Yes, Regnitz. Could I ask you what social class you each belong to?
Seriously, dude, why the fuck does that matter? Elliot claims to be a commoner. Gaius says where he comes from there's no social class. And Reen's answer...
Well... let's just say I haven't got a drop of noble blood in my veins. So I guess we're all on equal standing here.
Without spoiling anything, this is a plot point that will be brought up later in the game. And will kind of bite Reen in the ass. Anyway, the four run into Elisa, Emma, and Laura, with Elisa still feeling pretty awkward around Reen. And Laura properly introduces herself, and tells them that she's from a town called Legram, and tells everyone that she is the daughter of a man named Viscount Arciade, who is also the Lord of Legram, thus making her a noble. Therefore, we get an awkward situation with Machias after his outbursts over his hatred for nobles. Then Emma introduces herself, who got into Thoris through a scholarship. You can tell she's the smart one because of the glasses. And finally, Elisa tells everyone her name, and that she's from a town called Ruhr, but is still pretty fucking pissed at Reen. Reen asks her about her bow, but she's still having her tsundere moment.
There is, but I don't see how that's any of your business.
Ouch.
They ask to stick together, but Laura straight up says that she's good with a sword, and has such a big-ass sword that I really don't know where she keeps it.
She's taller and sturdier than I am, though I admit it's still hard to believe anyone could swing that beast of a sword.
Well, I mean, obviously, a character wielding a giant-ass sword is kind of a popular thing in Japan. Reen gives us some insight about Viscount Arciade, and that he has the nickname the Radiant Blade Master, and how he has no doubt that Laura can hold her own in a sword fight. Continuing down the dungeon, they run into Fee, as she tells them that they're halfway done, with no real reason to backtrack, but whatever. And she does a ninja jump off of the walls.
What just happened?
Wow, lip sync much? The four head to a set of steps, and they hear some fighting. Rean and Gaius rush ahead, while Elliot and Machias follow after him. We see Husis being a badass, fighting a group of monsters that are surrounding him, and taking them down all by himself. Rean explains that Husis' fighting style is court fencing, which is a favorite of the nobility. Cut to them once again introducing themselves, and Husis doesn't hesitate to start shit-talking Machias. Machias fights back about how he's just like all nobles, being stuck up and flat out assumes that Husis likes to belittle people of lower class due to being in the Alberea family. Husis then makes a comeback referring to how Machias is the son of the Imperial Governor Karl Regnitz. These two assholes continue their fight, as you have to make the decision to stop one of them. And it's sort of a hard choice because neither one of them were in the right. As much as I don't like Machias, Husis did start this one fight, so... I had Rean tell Husis that he was being a dick for bringing up Machias' father, and he leaves. Machias calms down and tells them that even though his dad has a huge job, that they're still commoners, and I still kind of regret my decision. After a bit of level grinding and following the path, they make their way to what is seemingly the exit. As Rean ponders about what the school is planning, and the thought of people with different backgrounds, classes, and one being a foreigner, all being a part of this new class, we get our first boss fight, and it just so happens to be a gargoyle. The gargoyle has two forms. After beating the boss fight, the gargoyle still isn't dead, and the four are too exhausted to keep going, and Rean considers using an ace in the hole that he doesn't get to use yet. Anyway, we hear a girl saying stand back as she fires arrows at the monster. Elisa, Emma, and Laura come in to join the fight, giving the gargoyle a bit more damage. Then Fee and Husis come out of nowhere. Seriously though, how are those two the last to join up? They went ahead of everyone. All of a sudden, a light is glowing around all of them, and they manage to finish the gargoyle off with the cliched power of teamwork. They were wondering what the hell was up with the glowing light, and Sarah comes in to congratulate them with a cheesy line.
Looks like friendship and teamwork saved the day once again.
The students ask questions about why the 9 of them were chosen specifically. Sarah replies that there was no specific reason why they got chosen, but one of the big reasons for Class 7's existence would have to be their Arcus units. As Sarah brings up a gameplay mechanic that we will get into in a bit called combat linking. As she explains that they were all combat linked, when all 9 were united fighting the gargoyle. Sarah's answer for them being chosen for this class is that they all apparently, out of all the freshmen coming into this school, these 9 specifically had the highest aptitude. Sarah says that they can opt out of Class 7 and join a regular class that they would have been assigned otherwise. Rean remembers a childhood incident, and he says he will stick with Class 7, as everyone else agrees while given their reason.
Count me in as well. The greater the challenge, the more I can push myself to excel. One can't hone a blade without grit, after all.
Let's make it 3. Considering how far I came to attend this school, it'd be silly to back down before I even started.
Allow me to take part as well. I was only able to come because of the school's generosity, so I feel it's my duty to help in any way I can.
Sign me up too! I kinda feel like fate brought us here for a reason, you know? And you all seem pretty easy to get along with.
It does bother me that you've got us using these Arcus units that are still pretty clearly in development. But if I let every little nitpick like that hold me back, I'd never amount to much.
Fine, I'm in.
I, Husis Alberea, claim my place as a member of Class 7.
I'm in! Come hell or high water!
Sarah is happy they all agreed, and from above, the principal and a blonde-haired man are talking about their expectations of Class 7, and the blonde man talks about their potential.
Seeing them there, I feel they have the potential to be the light we seek. A light that can break through the storm clouds that continue to build over our nation day by day.
So I've covered the prologue, with some minor spoilers, expecting comments about that even though I warned people at the start of the video. But it's time we talk about the gameplay, and we might as well start with combat. Battles are turn-based. You have your basic attacks, arts, and crafts. Your party members have 3 meters. The obvious HP meter that indicates health, the EP meter, think of it like a magic bar. EP gets consumed if you perform an art. Certain arts will be given to any character once a crystal called a quartz is set in their battle orbit, as they contain elemental powers. And the CP meter, which will allow you to use crafts, depending on how full your CP meter is. You will gain CP by performing basic attacks and taking damage. Using the crafts, which are unique moves for each party member, it will consume some amount of CP. Once the CP meter is full, you will be able to pull off an S-craft, which is a special move each character will unlock at certain points in the game. These will help you out tremendously in battle, especially in boss fights, as they deal a heavy amount of damage with a badass sequence to go with it. One thing to note are the Master Quartz that you set up in the center of your party members' battle orbits. Master Quartz will gain 10% of the EXP a character earns through combat. Typically, they will begin at level 1 and will have a max level of 5. As a Master Quartz gains levels, it will gain increased stats and sometimes grant new arts or other effects to the user. The Master Quartz will give the equipped party member exclusive status effects and packaged orbital arts that can be unlocked through leveling up. The battle system also has the feature of combat links, kind of similar to the link system from Tales of Xillia. If any 2 party members are linked, each member has the potential to earn follow-up attacks, special status effect boosts, healing, and more. A link attack is activated once a regular attack successfully unbalances the enemy, and you earn a bravery point by selecting an assist follow-up attack. You have the maximum of 5 bravery points that will be consumed by the rush and burst attacks. The rush attack, which costs 3 bravery points, would have both linked partners strike multiple times at a single target. And the burst attack, which costs all 5 bravery points, would involve the whole party doing an all-out attack on every enemy. One of the things that really got me hooked after the prologue is the fact that this game has some elements of the Persona franchise sprinkled in. At the start of most chapters, you'll be in class, and the teacher is doing his or her job, teaching the class about some history, for example, and he would like you to answer a question. So if you paid attention, or look up the answers on GameFAQs, and get the answers right, you gain academic points. The academic points, or AP for short, are earned, not just by answering the right answer, but by also making good decisions, and completing both main and side quests. Once you have enough AP, your rank goes up every time you report a quest. You have 15 ranks altogether, from B7 to A0. Every time you increase your rank, the Academy gives you a perk. After a day of class, you get a free day each month. Once every free day, you have the opportunity to do bonding events, and do tasks assigned to you by the student council. The tasks you are given are quests, with some of them being optional and some of them being mandatory. The mandatory quests will have the required mark, which is the red mark, whereas the optional quests are the ones with the green mark. And the optional quests will disappear if you didn't do them before exploring the schoolhouse. Some of these quests range from, hey, this student lost her notebook, look over campus to help her find it, or hey, let's tutor this child who lives in town. Some of these side quests can be pretty tedious, but there are some quests that involve you testing out a motorcycle, and it shows you how it runs. That one disappoints me though, because all you do is choose how Rin would slow the bike down, or he would accelerate, as opposed to actually controlling the bike. Either way, I do recommend doing both optional and mandatory quests, as the more you complete, the more AP you gain. For every free day, you will receive bonding points, as you trigger a bonding event. Speaking of bonding events, you spend time with your classmates or side characters around the campus. So pretty much just think the social link system from Persona. The bonding point will be used up once you view an event. However, the bond with the character you spend time with will strengthen, and each character has a link level with each other for any 2 characters. The levels go from 1 to 5, and depending on how any link level you have with a certain character, you will get some benefits in combat via the combat links. Link levels are not just exclusive to Rin, as the more you have 2 characters linked together in battle, the more their link level goes up. You will get an additional bonding point at the end of the day for one more bonding event, but that comes after some dungeon crawling. As for romancing any waifu of your choosing, it works a bit differently here than in Persona, as you more or less choose which character to have a special event with near the end of the game, and will add an extra scene to the finale with said character. One of the most important quests, if not the most important, will be exploring the abandoned schoolhouse. You're given this task every month, And you can choose any member of Class 7 for your party. Every month, a new floor is unlocked for you to explore. These dungeons are great for level grinding. As you get to the end of each dungeon, you will encounter a boss fight. After every boss fight, we get a cutscene of the characters talking about what they just experienced and questioning what the hell is up with this schoolhouse. One important thing in the story is that in every chapter, each member goes on a field study, where they travel to a different location across the Erebonian Empire, in which the class will be divided into two groups, known as Group A and B, with Rean always being in Group A because he's the main character. During the field studies, you will be doing the tasks you would be doing on your free days, but with some more variety, like exterminating a monster on the highway. You still have some lame requests though, like changing the light bulbs for the street lights on the highway. Don't you guys ever hire contractors or road workers for that kind of job? It makes no sense to have a group of teenagers doing it. After you finish your tasks, some main plot shit will go down, meaning some more dungeon crawling, and you fight a terrorist group that you will encounter a lot in this game, which is led by a Darth Vader wannabe. Not that Darth Vader wannabe. On the way to your location for your field study, you will be taking a train ride, almost every time I may add. Here on the train, you can talk to your classmates that you're traveling with, and you can play a card minigame called Blade. No, not that Blade. Depending on whom you play with, it will level up your combat links. It really doesn't matter if you win or lose though, as your link with the character you play with will still level up. To begin the game, both players draw one card from their deck and place it on the field. The player with the lower number has the first turn. There are two types of cards in this minigame, numbered and effect cards. The numbers range from 1 to 7. If your opponent plays a number, you want to choose a higher number, otherwise you will lose. The two element cards are Bolt and Mirror. The Bolt card will remove the last card placed by your opponent, and the Mirror card switches the position of the cards placed on the field. If the one card is placed after a Bolt card is used, it will bring back the last card removed by Bolt. When both players have a draw, they would have to draw another card and start over. While Blade is an easy way to level up a link with a character, it gets pretty old after a few times. However, when you start a match with Laura, you can catch a Yu-Gi-Oh reference.
Then let us begin our duel.
As for the cast of characters, I'll be going over the main cast in Class 7. Well, because the cast in this game is pretty huge, so for intents and purposes, I'm only going over the members of Class 7 as they're the main focus of the story, even though you get some other characters not associated with Class 7 joining the party from time to time, and it would make the video much longer than it already is anyway. Rean Schwarzer, our main protagonist. He is the adopted son of Baron Theo Schwarzer, and achieved beginner rank in the 8 Leaves 1 Blade school. He is easygoing, honest, polite, and sociable, and is deemed the unofficial leader of Class 7, despite him saying otherwise at times. He's not the most interesting character, at least not in part 1, but he's passable and a very good character in combat with his sword techniques. Rean's crafts are largely focused on inflicting the delay statuses. Some seal the target's movement, while some deal burn damage for extra offense. And going more about his character development would be going into more spoiler territory. Elisa Reinford, the daughter of the chairman of the Reinford Group. She has a strong-willed and opinionated personality. She's also a bit hot-headed, and jumps the gun over the misunderstanding at the beginning of the game, as she can be a bit tsundere. Fuck you, tsundere haters. Tsunderes are adorable. She gets flustered by unexpected events, like when her family's maid shows up and is taking care of the class in the dorm. And she has some other issues, but despite her rough exterior, she's very caring. In combat, she uses her archery skills, and is good for regular attacks, because she can frequently unbalance enemies. And her craft skills has a mixture of offense and support, so it's very helpful. Elliot Craig, the son of the General Olaf Craig, and is an aspiring musician. Elliot is kind of timid, but will still aid his friends in combat. He's one of the least developed characters in the game, sadly enough. Elliot's crafts are pretty much support, as they're geared more towards healing and buffing the party. However, crafts like Nocturne Bell are pretty useful against enemies, because it can cause them to sleep. Laura S. Arciade, the daughter of Victor S. Arciade, and the heiress of the Arciade family, a distinguished noble family, known for their unmatched swordsmanship. Thus makes her a gifted swordswoman, and is possibly one of the most popular characters in the game. She's known for her pride, dignity, and composure. She thrives to improve her swordsmanship, and sees every battle as an opportunity to get stronger. Laura in combat can be described as a powerhouse kind of character, as crafts such as Earth Cleaver and brilliant spin, can deal a good amount of damage. Machias Regnitz, the son of the Imperial Governor Karl Regnitz, and the vice president of the class. Also, as you can tell, he was one of my least favorite characters.
He's an asshole.
For the first few chapters of the game, he has shown a great amount of hatred towards the nobility, calling them all arrogant and stuck up, and it gets pretty old very quickly. It almost reminded me a bit of Rosie from Valkyria Chronicles, except at the very least he's not a racist. After some character development, and talking about that further would be a spoiler, he does calm down a bit on the nobles, and becomes more tolerable later on, although him and Husis will still butt heads from time to time. Despite my opinion of the character, he's actually really good in combat. His shotgun does really good damage to enemies, as what a shotgun should do, but also some of his crafts are pretty good, such as the self-explanatory petrification shell and burst drive, which gives characters a higher rate for avoiding attacks. Husis Alberea, the second son of Helmut Alberea, the head of the Alberea Duke family. He's the type of person who can seem to be pompous and arrogant to those who don't know him, irritating commoners like Machias, for example. Husis has a somewhat dismissive attitude towards many things. He can be sharp in his words and actions, but is informed, considerate, and thoughtful. He wasn't a favorite of mine at the start, but I ended up liking him more as the game progressed, because of the good traits, and what you learn about him. In battle, he uses a fencing kind of sword style. Crafts like Treasure's Sword could either freeze or seal an enemy, and Noble Command will raise his and other nearby party members' stats. Emma Milstein, an incredibly bright young woman who got into Thoris through a scholarship, and is class president of Class 7. She is kind and gentle, and is often relied upon by her classmates for her warm spirit. Though quite the intellectual, she does, however, keep her past a secret. We get hints about her here and there, but her character development is pretty minimal in part 1. It's a good thing there's a sequel, but we'll get to that in another video. Emma is a magic user, thus she fights with a staff like Elliot, and Jesus Christ, she has the best crafts in this game. Serene Blessing, which will revive any party member. Ethereal Edge, where she summons magical swords that fly straight into enemies. Crescent Shell, which raises a character's defense and can deflect magic attacks, and Aster Flare, which can cause burn onto an enemy. Fee Clausel, a quiet girl who doesn't take a strong interest in many things. She doesn't focus much on studying, and tends to slack off by sleeping anywhere in the school, which explains why she tends to do poorly. Fee is a good character, because she gets a good amount of character development in the game, and we learn more about her past. But you're gonna have to play the game for yourself because that would be a spoiler. Fee is primarily an offense character, as all of her crafts are attacks, and she fights with twin gun swords. The two crafts of hers that I do recommend using the most are Bullet Cyclone and Skewed Ripper, as they deal a lot of damage. Gaius Warzel, an exchange student from the Nord Highlands. He is mild-mannered and polite, making fast friends with most he meets. I don't hate him, but I don't particularly love him either, as he's the most bland of the main group. His little "the winds guide me" comments are kind of tiring after a while, because he does them a lot. However, he's pretty good in battle, as he uses a cross spear, with ranged attacks like Gale Stinger could damage multiple enemies in a straight line. He also has a self-support craft known as Wild Rage, which sacrifices 30% of health for some extra CP. Class 7's roster doesn't stop here, however, as later in the game 2 characters join in. Crow Armburst and Milliam Orion end up as new classmates. Milliam Orion, a 13-year-old girl who is accompanied by her mechanical puppet, Aragetlam, which she nicknames Lammy. Not sure how a 13-year-old kid got into a high school, but whatever. She is a member of the Ironblood, an information agency under the direct control of Chancellor Goliath Osborne. Milliam can be an extremely annoying character. In battle, she uses her robotic puppet as a weapon. Despite her being obnoxious, she's got some useful crafts. Ultimate Barrier, where she makes herself immune to physical attacks, and Riot Beam, that will shoot a laser at the enemies. As you can see in the footage, her moveset is pretty damn good. Crow Armburst. Yeah, remember him from earlier? He's actually more important than you think he would have been at first. A second year at Thor's, and can be kinda like a mentor character towards Reen. He ended up joining Class 7 because of him not having enough credits to graduate. As you can tell, he's a slacker, yet he can come off as clever at times. Getting past all that, he's a reliable upperclassman to Class 7, and he's got that smart-ass personality that I like in characters thus made him one of my favorite characters in the game. Unfortunately, any more about him would be pretty spoiler heavy around the final chapter. He fights with 2 pistols. His crafts range from something like Freezing Bullet, which as you can tell from the goddamn name, will freeze an enemy in place, to something like Wild Card, which can put a random effect on an ally or an enemy, to Chaos Trigger, where he would shoot an elemental blow at enemies to cause either confusion or nightmare. Overall, I think it's a good cast, with some really good characters, a few annoying ones, and some more forgettable than others. But now let's move on to the music. And damn is this score simply amazing. Composed by Falcom Team JDK, the music has a good blend of orchestral with a little bit of rock sprinkled in here and there. The regular battle music is pretty catchy, and it gets me in the mood to maul some enemies for XP. The track Exceed, not to be confused with the company that localized the game, will play during some crazy moments like fighting a giant enemy at the schoolhouse, and once that track plays, you know shit's going down. And as for the opening theme Pulsation to Tomorrow, while it does feel like an anime opening, well, duh, it gets me excited to start this epic journey and follow these characters and see them grow. As for voice acting, the North American version is only packed with the English dub. However, the dub is pretty good, with some well-known VAs like Ben Diskin, Cassandra Lee Moraes, and Keiji Tong, to name a few. And they all do a great job voicing their characters, and put some good emotion in a lot of scenes. Although, one thing that irks me is that in some scenes, everyone is voiced except for Rin, and it's very off-putting at times. And to make matters even more off-putting, you will have some scenes where it's just text for everyone, and then a character shows up in the same exact scene, and all of a sudden, BAM! The characters have voices again. Another criticism I have is that the graphics look outdated, but I can understand why, as from what I read, this was designed with the PS Vita in mind, and they decided to port it to PS3. So I can't entirely fault the game for that. However, what I can fault the game for is that sometimes during a cutscene, there will be a noticeable drop in frame rate, be it a lot of characters being on screen, or when you're in big open areas of large cities. Thankfully, it's nothing game-breaking, as it never happens in combat. Overall, this game is a really good RPG, with a good story, fun combat, and a diverse cast of characters. If you have a reason to dust off your PS3, this game would be it, even if it's not perfect. And that's why I give The Legend of Heroes: Trails of Cold Steel an 8 out of 10. However, this was only part 1 of this story. At some point in time, we'll be taking a look at Trails of Cold Steel 2. See you later, guys.